Welcome to the Ambitious Coach Lab, powered by 90. I'm your host, Dr. Cam Lawson. Each week, we explore the real tactics, tough conversations, and breakthrough moments that drive coaching success. Let's jump into today's episode. Well, hey, friends, we have got Ross Gibbs with us today. He is an expert EOS implementer. He's got 9 years of experience in the EOS world. So you have been around for a little while. You probably knew the coach that I worked with way back in the day when I went through an EOS implementation, Cullen Talley. I don't know if that rings a bell, but
Sure.
was as an EOS implementer back in the day. But I am so excited to talk to you. We're going to dive into really just how you manage leadership teams and
Mm.
making sure they're going through with progress in the session room, outside of the session room. So, really excited to have you with us here today, Ross. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Cameron. It's a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, as we kind of kick it off, just why don't you share a little bit about how you got into the EOS world and became an implementer?
yeah, no, great question. And this actually the story I'm going to share. I actually share when I first meet a client. So I'm just going to kind of do what I normally do.
Love it.
But entrepreneurship literally has been in my family for 5 generations. So in the early 1900s, my great grandfather started a wild rice company in Deer River, Minnesota. And so it's just been part of my blood. Literally, if one of my 4 kids wants to be an entrepreneur, there would be generation number 6. But
Wow.
for me, growing up, literally around I saw entrepreneurship and business around the dinner table every night in my home, and I saw the good, bad, and the ugly, and I think it just had a profound impact on me. For the last 25 to 30 years, I've been mostly responsible for my own paycheck in various ownership and leadership roles. I've owned 4 companies, including the one I'm in now. And to be vulnerable and honest, one was a complete disaster, crash and burn. That's where I learned the most. But when I unpack my past on the common denominator for me, what really motivated me was I was always trying to make a difference for my employees and my customers, and it never really filled my bucket. So our last business, my wife and I grew, kind of invested, grew, and sold a fitness franchise in Minnesota. And when we kind of sold that off, as I was considering my next steps, I went to a good friend of mine. I said, "What's proven? It's immediately usable where I can help the world. I don't have to create my own intellectual property." And without hesitation, he said, "Oh, you got to read the book Traction." I'm like, "Traction? I never even heard about this book. What the heck?" So I read the book and I never put it down. I haven't put it down in the last 10 years. I've held it up. And literally, Cameron, this fills my bucket 100% of my time with impacting people now, my customers, my employees. I just love what I do, help business owners, leaders get what they want. And so it's just absolutely fantastic. So that's kind
Man,
of high level.
yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. It's
Yeah.
so funny as you talk to people that have, even really any kind of experience in EOS, but especially those that have been around for a while. It really goes back to this. Hey, somebody that was influential in my life or that I was a part of handed me a copy of Traction. It seems that that story is just such a commonplace in the framework.
Oh yeah. I mean, every implementer that's become an implementer has that story. Either they were, implementation was happening when they were inside their company, or a similar story like me where I did implement it. I made a lot of mistakes, and someone tells them to read the book. So, absolutely, everybody's got their little story. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, as you get to the different tiering system for implementers in EOS, right? You have achieved a certain amount of sessions. Is that correct? Of how you're become an expert. Is that correct?
Yeah, so when you start out as an implementer, and again, you got a lot of support. EOS Worldwide does an amazing job. They got a new program called the 180 days or the 180-day sprint. So basically, they really get behind that first implementer. And when you start out, you are a professional implementer. And then once you reach a certain amount of sessions, you become certified. And once you've done 500 sessions lifetime, you then become an expert. And then there's a higher designation if you want to wind down your business, but the emeritus, that's just given to people that have been around for a long time. they don't have to do so many sessions a year. So it is tiered. And I always say we never arrive, Cameron. I mean, yes, I'm an expert, and it sounds a little funny to hear that, but at the end of the day, I'm always striving. I'm always trying to get better. I never truly arrive. And I think that's what keeps me on my toes every time.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
would call that, we have core competencies of what we believe it takes for business coaches to be successful as they grow and scale their practice. And mastery is one of those. And I think you
Yeah.
hit right on it with that. I'm never arrived. I'm always learning. And I think there's a common thread that I see in elite business coaches, which is that mindset where it's just always hungry, always being willing to learn, no matter who it's from. And so I talk a little bit about kind of as you've achieved a lot of success with your practice, not just from a session standpoint, but you've
Yeah.
built a great practice that's influential and is leading to real results for your clients. But can you talk a little bit about, hey, what's next for you on the path for your practice?
I really love the space I'm in right now, and I'm good. I mean, there's firm models where you get implementers below you, and I don't know if you knew this, but I actually work with my wife. She's my business
Oh,
partner, so she's more my integrator and my COO. She's keeping the trains on time, and I'm more the visionary. I show up for the sessions. She keeps me focused, and that dynamic, we're living that just like we teach it with our clients. We are living that dynamic. And so right now, I'm loving the space I'm in. I think the next steps for me, like when I look at my 3-year picture, I mean, I see a book on the horizon, perhaps. Not perhaps, it's going to happen. I see a book on the horizon that I want to get out and just kind of life lessons on what I've learned through my 9 years plus of implementation and just the gifts that I've been given by my clients. And I think people forget we learn. I think good coaches learn as much from their clients as hopefully they learn from us. It's a two-way street. We're learning and growing. We make mistakes just like anybody else. So I really love the space that I'm in, and I see opportunity to expand it with perhaps a book and with some stories to share around that.
Oh,
Yeah.
I can't wait
Yeah.
to dive into that one. So, you mentioned it's fascinating that you work with your wife, where she kind of goes into the integrator thing, you go into the visionary, and there are specific roles that each one of those plays. So
Right.
let's talk a little bit because I think there is a very important part of a coach that's going in and you're managing different egos, different personalities, different
Yeah.
strengths and weaknesses, and all that. So can you talk a little bit about the dynamic, not necessarily just from you and your wife, but really from the session? You probably pull from that a little bit, but about how that works in a session room with that visionary integrator combination?
Yeah. So let's just go back in time a little bit. When a business owner gets into business, Cameron, they get into it because they love one or two things. Oh, I love this, and they they get into it and they realize there's 8 or 7 other things that they got to do that isn't their unique ability. And so what happens is a lot of times they get into business, they think they're going to get freed up, and they eventually do for a little while, but then they end up getting consumed and the business kind of consumes them because this is typically the visionary owner that's I'm really good at sales and I'm good at typically they're really good at sales and they get into their business and they realize they got accounting and marketing and all these other things they got to do, and so right around the 10 or 10 plus employees, that's when you got to start thinking about a right hand person we call the integrator. So the typical visionary, they're going 1,000 miles an hour. They want it all tomorrow. They're a little more emotional, right? We are a little more, I'll speak for myself, we're a little more emotional. We wear our oceans on our sleeves. We want it all tomorrow. Nothing's ever fast enough. But we're really good with big ideas, big problems, big relationships, industry trends, culture. We're great at that. But now we need, and I need right around 10 clients for me. I needed a right hand person. That's when Marty, my wife, came in as my business partner. Again, integrator is totally different, a little more logical, right? A little more, their noses to the grindstone. They're removing obstacles and barriers. Their attention to detail. They're not looking for any glory, and they keep the ships on time. And That's the dynamic, and letting go to that person to allow them to do that. So your ability to kind of let go, but then they need to grab that. So I always say, we've got to let go of the vine, but we need someone to really grab that vine and take it to the next level. And so that dynamic plays out in every company that I work with. Now, every company doesn't have to have a visionary. I would say 80% of them do, they have it, but 20% don't. But you need an integrator. You need someone to remove obstacles and barriers, be accountable for the P&L, drive EOS, and keep the trains on time. So that dynamic is really important. And it's kind of like this. I'll give you a visual, and I don't see it. Yeah, here it is. Sorry, I'm going to grab my Rubik's cube. This is my greatest analogy of EOS. When a business owner gets into business, they're in everything. So
Mhm.
if I'm yellow, I'm yellow. I'm involved in everything. Well, it gets a little messy. And so what EOS does, it gets everyone into their color, right? My wife's going to be white. I'm going to be yellow. I'm going to hire marketing, sales. I'm going to get, and then over the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to get everybody into their color. And then we're going to execute the business. So we're going to go from me doing everything to certain people, right seats. Don't worry about, it's a Dan Sullivan concept. Don't worry about how. Go find the who's. Who, not how. And that's what EOS is about. That's my best analogy of what EOS can do for a company.
I've never heard that before. That's so
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
because it's so true.
Yeah,
Because have you found that I'll just speak from my personal experience,
for
right?
sure.
So, went through an EOS implementation, right? Was part of a visionary founder, right? And worked for him. I was the head of marketing
Yeah,
on the leadership team.
absolutely.
We had an operations director that just out of proximity was kind of the right person. We went through the whole process, but then they're, I think, on their third integrator now. It's been very difficult to kind of go in and figure out, hey, who's the right person, right? And so that's something that took a while. And all of the people that were in that role were great people. Like they were
Sure.
good leaders, but just not the right fit. And there was it was almost a visionary integrator mesh. Do you find that that is a key part? It might be the right person. They might have some leadership chops, but it's just not the right fit for that visionary.
Yeah, no, really good. And if you go to rocketfuel.com, they have all these assessments. They're free. You get an integrator score, a visionary score. There's a way for visionaries to assess their integrators. You said something very interesting. You said mesh, and we call it kind of similar, but it's a puzzle piece. And every visionary needs a different puzzle piece to match them. They're not all equal. And so I joke around. I actually have a client they're on their fourth integrator. And I said, look, don't feel bad. There's no shame. All the people are still in the company. They just had to try it and they finally got it nailed down. And so sometimes you got to go through a little trials and tribulations to arrive at where you need to be. And so don't give up. It's a puzzle piece. It's about communication. And the biggest tool, if and again, not to get too heavy on this, is the visionary doesn't lead and manage and hold that integrator accountable from an accountability perspective. What they do is they get it. There's a tool we call same page meeting, where every week they're getting on the same page, and that I want you to think of the integrator as the defensive coordinator, right? Football. And your visionary is the offensive coordinator. So they want it all. They want to go for the bomb. They want to, do all this crazy stuff. Or the integrator's like, defensive coordinator, hang on, there, stop the press here. I have to protect the rest of the organization from that whiplash and, you know, flavors of the month and seminars and all that. And that's what a good integrator does. They kind of mitigate the noise and they keep the company focused on what they need to focus on. So saying no is really important. Finding that integrator that respects the visionary but can say no, that's a it takes a special person to say no to a visionary, as you have seen, I'm sure. I mean, do you have
Yeah.
when you were with your company, I mean, if you have a strong visionary, that's not easy.
Yeah, because then there's also the dynamic of you've referenced it and alluded to it earlier, but the letting go of the vine, I think is the term, right?
Yeah.
But there is a challenge with that. So how as a coach do you tap into that to help visionaries get to that where they feel comfortable enough or feel empowered enough, whatever you want to call it, to start to let go of those maybe sales, maybe marketing, or whatever they're holding on to so they can get fully into that visionary seat.
Yeah. And actually, I'll play it forward. Let's go to the end. When this is really working well, there's actually a little feeling out to pasture from a visionary. In other words, when it's working, they kind of feel, oh my God, I'm not as needed. No, they're just needed in a different way. In other words, big ideas, big relationships, big problems, industry trends. So your integrator's making 80 to 90% of the day-to-days decisions. But when something big comes up, someone needs talking to, or someone needs this or that, that's when the visionary comes in. And so going back to your question, I restate that one more time, just so I want to make
Yeah.
sure I get it.
So, how do you, as a coach,
Got it. Okay.
navigate that with the visionary?
Yeah. So there's a tool that we use and it works really well. It's a Dan Sullivan tool, and I think you'll appreciate it. It's just called Delegate and Elevate. In other words, in order to elevate, we need to delegate. And so what we do is we work with the visionary once, and we're making an assumption here that each of the people that we're delegating to now are the right people sitting in the right seats. In other words, they're above the bar on core values, right? Your plus minus. They're
Mhm.
at or above the bar on core values. They're at or above the bar in performance. We call it GWC. Do they get it, want it, capacity? Making that assumption now, everybody's the right person in the right seat. Now we go to the visionary, and all the leaders in the company, to be honest, need to start delegating. We need to make extensions of ourselves. So how do we do that? We make a note of what do we love? What do they love that they're great at, right? That's your upper left quadrant. The upper right quadrant is what are they good at that they like doing? And keep those tasks that's where they want to live. So I live in my upper two quadrants right now, almost 100%. The bottom two is what we want to start delegating. So your lower left would be you don't like it, but you're good at it. So my example of this was QuickBooks. I was good at it, didn't like it, and I gave my wife 6 months. I trained her. I had to have patience. Did we have a little conflict? Absolutely. We had some arguments. There was some tension, but now she owns QuickBooks, and I don't have to worry. Matter of fact, when she calls on a question, she's calling her accountant or QuickBooks Direct. I'm completely out of it. The lower right quadrants don't like not good. That's easy. But most leaders don't give up that lower left quadrant because here's the message they play, Cameron. You ready? Here's what they say. They say, well, by the time I tell them to do it, I could just do it myself. And if you know what you're worth per hour and you add that up, what's that actually costing you and the company to not give that up? And so that's a very powerful exercise. And matter of fact, I joke around. My granddaughter does my marker audits for me now because I'm good at it, but I don't like it. And she does it and she loves it. So hopefully, whoever you delegate to, they love and they're great at, they like and they're good at. But sometimes that's not always the case, right? But whose time is more valuable, the leader or the non leader? And it's not a narcissistic view. It's not a I'm better than you. It's just le- entrepreneurs or visionary owners need to know what they're worth an hour. And if you're doing $10 to $15 an hour work, sorry, you're just not going to get to the next level. So my biggest discovery around this is it's not that leaders or owners can't scale their business and let go in this manner. It's just they won't do it because it's too scary for them. There's a lot of fear.
It's funny you say that because I think there are times where even as I've done that exercise in my own life and you start to realize, okay, in this role, I mean, for me, I just the data entry and those kinds of things that are like really down in the nitty gritty of things
Yeah.
just drains my soul.
Right.
and but then you kind of start to justify, okay, well, that's just there's always gonna be things that I don't like in a role, whatever,
Of
blah blah blah
course.
blah blah. But then you start to when you do that exercise, you start to realize there are people that love getting into the nitty-gritty in your organization, and you're like, "You like that?"
You're like,
But
what?
right. And so but I think
Yeah.
that's an eye-opening moment to a leader, and I'm sure especially an owner, where it's, "Oh my goodness, there are people in my organization that actually love doing the things that I don't necessarily love or like doing."
Yeah.
And then
Well,
when it's a mental shift.
it's a mental shift. And matter of fact, I'll even tell leaders this. I said, take the word delegate and elevate off the top and have all your employees list out what they love that they're great at. Like, because we know they can't always delegate, but that'll give you a roadmap now to what you could delegate to them. Follow me? So you could actually reverse engineer this, have them do the delegate and elevate without it saying that. You just say, hey, what do you love that you're great at? What do you like that you're good at? And now I kind of have a roadmap of, oh, I could offline load this to these two and these. And now I've got a plan because that's their upper two quadrants and my lower two. And now we have some synergy. So that's another creative way to get everybody lined up. But you're spot on. That just takes time. 90% of your issues are around people. And so if you don't have the right people in the right seats, we always say that accountability chart is the root of all evil. That is where it all starts and ends. You got to have right people, right seats.
Talk a little bit on in the dynamic of, let's say, in a session, right? Maybe
Yeah,
in a quarterly or in an annual.
sure.
Talk about maybe some, because you mentioned it a little bit. There's some tension, and I think there's healthy tension. Tension is not a bad thing, right?
No,
At the
yeah,
heart of balance, there is tension, right? And so there is a healthy level of tension and probably conflict, right?
yeah,
And there's unhealthy tension and unhealthy conflict. And I'm sure you've
100%.
seen all of it by as an expert. I mean, you've been in quite a few sessions. Can you talk a little bit about how you manage that tension in a leadership? Doesn't even necessarily have to be the visionary integrator tension, but just
Yeah,
as a leadership team.
yeah. So in a session, my number one job is to make everyone feel safe in the session. This needs to be a sanctuary of confidentiality. So before a session even starts, when we start a session, I go, hey guys, we've got to be open and honest. We've got to be open minded. We've got to be vulnerable, and we talk about this every session. And so after two or three or four of these, they kind of see how safe it is. And so as an implementer, we have three roles that we play very strongly in a session. We're teachers, we're facilitators, and coaches. Let me explain. So, teachers meaning we're going to teach it purely because trust me, the world needs pure EOS. And so, our job is to teach it purely, and they may modify it, tweak it, but when we're in a session, this is the facilitation part. So a lot of times they think EOS implementers are consultants. One of our selling proposition is that we are not consultants. And again, I'm not there's nothing against consultants because there's amazing consultants, but consultants are experts and they can create a little dependency because they're the subject matter expert. And so we're not a guru or a strategist of a company. We're not here to tell them where they're going. Our job is to facilitate the greatness in a session. In other words, it's all in the room, 95% of the answer. So when there's tension, I think a good implementer will ask good questions. Hey, it sounds like when Bob said that, I'm sensing some uncomfortableness with that. What's going on? So I just ask good questions. Or how does everybody feel when Bob just said that? Because I sense it. So my job are good implementers, and all of them are good. Our job is to facilitate the greatness and go to the danger in a healthy way. And so I have this little vernacular that I use. I call it stay in the crucible. So, in other words, it's called the crucible theory. And by the way, anyone watching, I'm going to save you about $10,000 therapy right now. So, when we become agitated, there's two extremes that I see leaders go to. They become either a victim where they shut down, or they become a perpetrator and they run over everyone. And so you can become a victim and a perpetrator in 1 second. You can go from one to one all in 1 second. So how do we stay in the crucible? And the reason why we say crucibles can handle high levels of heat when you're in a laboratory. So how do we remain our best selves when things get a little heated up? So the vernacular I use is, all right, guys, let's stay in the crucible. Don't go to the extremes because once we go to the extremes, it's over. And so my job is to make it safe, facilitate the greatness. Because I will say this: when you have a stimulus and a response, right? You have something happens to us or said to us, and then when we respond, our freedom is in the gap. It's
Mm,
between the stimulus and the response. And And to take it further, we have a responsibility as a leader to remain our best selves when things get a little heated up. So I'll bring that kind of structure into a session and that seems to really do a good job. But at the end of the day, we just ask really good questions. We make it feel safe. We go to the danger. In other words, we're prepared to say anything that the room's thinking. We're protecting the room
Mm.
and we're actually prepared to perhaps get fired because of it. And we're not being jerks. Like, I'm coming from a really good place. I'm staying in the crucible. So we've got to go to the danger. And that's why um, we're appreciated because we obsess over three things: vision, traction, healthy. So vision's easy. That's going to take 2 to 3 days. Traction, that's that accountability now. That's going to take 2 to 3 years. Team health, I'm joking now, takes 2 to 3 lifetimes without an implementer because there's so much scarcity and fear sometimes in business that if you don't have the right implementer in the room, team health is why most implementers are in a session room after 2 or 3 years because they just like us in the room. They feel safe.
Mm.
The goal is not to create dependency, but independency. It's not designed for that, but that's why we're appreciated in a session. That's really our secret sauce. Vision's easy. Traction's a little harder, but that a team health, that, you know, like you said, picking out the tension and asking good questions and kind of going to the danger.
There is an art to understanding when to, I think you said it, and I've heard others say it too, enter the danger, right? Because there is a level of you are in that room with a leadership team that are all humans who have
Yeah.
all brought emotional things personally, professionally in that room. And you're talking about emotional topics too, deep, weighty things that, and strong beliefs about where the organization is going to go.
Yeah.
And so there is a level of letting them work through that as a team,
Right.
but also then having the, I would call it emotional intelligence to understand, okay, that probably crossed the line, need to address that and get us back on. And the coaches that I've been fortunate to have in my life are experts in that, of knowing how far to let us stretch and go and push and pull,
Yeah.
and then stepping in and getting us focused again.
Yeah. It's an art and a science. It really is. And again, as long as the room isn't dysfunctional, but I sense dysfunction, but it's not apparent in the room and we're not, sometimes I have to let that play out because when there's enough pain, they'll finally decide. And so
Mm.
I will prod and, do some prodding, but you're absolutely right. Sometimes you got to let it play out. And just, it's like I said, it's an art and a science. It's not a one size fits all. Absolutely.
And then my you said one thing, and my gut is telling me to go there, so
Go
I'm gonna
there.
do it. I'm
Do
listening.
it.
But you mentioned something about how when you're in those moments, it's
Yeah.
very. I'm gonna butcher exactly what you said, but
Yeah.
it was the principle of it was, hey, I need to be in a mental state myself to be able to speak into that. So, can you talk a little bit about what
Yeah.
that means? Because I think there is something incredibly powerful about making sure that you are mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally healthy going into a session so you can provide that space, safe
One
space for clients.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I always say this is their Super Bowl of planning. I mean, I do a lot of sessions, but no one cares what I did yesterday. I'm walking into a new team, and so this is their Super Bowl of planning. So I've got to be mentally sharp. I've got to be literally physically sharp because I got to. And so we've got to take care of our minds, our bodies, and nourish ourselves. So we've got to go in with the right mindset. So I just like I coach my teams, preparation equals greatness. We've got to prepare for the meeting. And so the night before a meeting, I'm preparing, I'm looking at, here's some of the things that we got to look at. And I'm doing my assessment, and here's what I'm going to let play out. Here's what we need to address. Every team that I work with, Cameron, has one or two big pressing issues in the session that we just got to go to. And my job is to figure out what those are. And it's not, you'd be surprised, it's not the 7 or 10 things. It's usually one or two things. And once we deal with that, the session gets uncogged and there's a aha and there's relief. And so my job is to figure out where that where those issues are. And so being prepared is really a key, really, really important.
On the concept of team health, let's say, what are some of the maybe indicators or just ways that you can identify that beyond just a visionary integrator, but if you wanna take it from that angle, that's fine because I think that's critical.
Right.
But what
Sure.
are some indicators that team health is being built or that they're in a good place?
They're looking at each other in the eye and they're not looking at me as the implementer.
Hmm,
So a lot of times when I'm at the head of the room while they're talking, and this will happen sometimes early on in the relationship or later on, but I try to say, don't try to bring me up to speed. I'll learn your business. Just I'm just facilitating the greatness in the room. And it's normal to look at the implementer or whoever's leading the room, but I think I have found from my experience that the eye contact isn't around me anymore. It's about them. And so that's a sign of a really healthy team is the eye contact and the interaction. And they'll look at me here and there, but I'm not like a lot of times when there's dysfunction, they're looking at me and they're really talking to Bob next to them, but they can't look at Bob. So one of the facilitation techniques that we're taught and that I've learned is so if someone's looking at me, but they should be looking at Bob, I'll actually look at Bob. And over 20 to 30 seconds of doing that, they finally start looking at Bob. And so that little nuance just gets them. That's that team health thing. And so there's just something down there, but the healthiest teams, I'm just dumbing it down. Like they really are engaged and they look at each other and they lean on me when they're stuck, but they're not looking at me the whole time. Just a little
yeah.
subtle observation. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good,
Yeah.
very insightful thing that I'm sure you've learned over time. But I mean, on
Yeah.
you know, you are with them a couple times a year, right? Probably interacting some, outside of that, but
Yeah.
in session, right?
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about? I mean, what tools have you found are helpful? Because there is that. I mean, being in a session, you're working through lots of things. It's high intensity. It's awesome. You come out of that energized, but also exhausted. It's a weird thing. And if you've never been through one, you don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But there's
Yeah.
something about it. It's like the duality of a EOS session room, right?
Yes.
But the once you get out of that and you go back to your desk on Monday morning or where the
Yeah.
next day or whatever it is,
Right.
what tools have you found help companies really implement EOS well in their organization when they just get back on their own?
Yeah, so there's 5 tools that does 80% of the heavy lifting. Again, that's that VTO, the Vision Traction Organizer. Really, it's really a two-page document that allows you to manage your business on
Mm,
2 pages. And it answers 8 questions. That's the core values, core focus, 10-year target, marketing strategy, 3-year picture, 1-year plan, quarterly rocks, and issues. So that is really important. And then they just got to share it every quarter. And the key is for that team to align on that. So, to the degree that the team aligns around those 8 questions, you now have a vision. The biggest discovery there is it's not that leaders lack vision. They don't agree on it. That's the problem. So, once we get them to agree on those 8 questions, it reduces all those symptomatic issues that goes on in a company. The next one is the accountability chart. Do I have the right people sitting in the right seat? Pretty simple. What are the 3 to 7 roles that we all got to get, want, and have capacity to deliver? Then it's the concept of rocks, meaning these are just fancy words for 90-day priorities. Vern Harness came up with the term, and Stephen Covey kind of brought it to life. But what are we going to do every 90 days to move towards our 1 year plan? And then meetings. Are we in level 10 meetings? Most companies are a 4. We call it a level 10 because we're shooting for a 10. There's a very world class, unique format that we follow. And then scorecard. Are we keeping score? In other words, what numbers do we need to see each week from each person without a manager telling them they won or lost the week? And and so once those 5 tools are rolled out, that does 80% of the heavy lifting. But to be honest, vision's pretty easy, traction's a little harder. The one I really love once those 5 are in place, Cameron, is the team health pyramid
mm,
by Patrick Lencioni.
yeah.
Really deep diving on that. How can we trust each other, have more high level trust, better conflict, more commitment, accountability, and results. It's a chain reaction. That's a fun tool. I love annuals because it takes 6 to 9 months to get to an annual, but that's where the rubber meets the road is that team health.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Man, I all of that is someone who's been through that. You start to get those things in place, and you start to see execution on, here's where we said we were going to go from a high level, and then we're breaking it down, and then we're starting to see rocks, and then the L10. There's something about an L10 meeting, the level
Yeah.
10. There is, once you go to a level 10 meeting, you never want to be in another type of meeting. You just
No.
don't, because it's just that's not efficient. And there's some secret sauce in a level 10 meeting that makes it so. I remember the first time we ran one, we did our stuff on 90. And so we got into 90. We had all of our information in there and started it. And it was just like, that was the most efficient meeting we've ever run. So
Well, absolutely. Well, I mean, if you think about the EOS level 10, it's really the glue that holds it all together. In other
mm,
words, we're segueing that beginning, like personal best, business best. We're building team health. We're going from on the business or in the business to on. We're segueing, right? And then how did last week go with the scorecard? Um, are we on track for our rocks? What are the headlines or cascading messages? And then accountability is baked in with the to dos. And now we're going to talk about the rest of our issues. But if you don't meet in that format, this whole thing falls apart. And you're absolutely right. Most of my clients by the third session are glued to the level 10 meeting.
yeah,
And then I tell them, hey, there's 11 other disciplines on this amazing model. I want you to feel the same way. But
yes.
that is really, and that's done by on purpose. That is our process is designed to get them traction first, and that's why the level 10s are so powerful.
Hey Ross, this has been so good. I appreciate
Yeah.
you sharing
Yeah.
just how you manage the different types of personalities and egos and
Yeah.
individuals with different giftings and strengths and weaknesses, and talking through some of the tools you use. But in closing, I always like to ask guests just a couple questions. The first one is, if you were starting over, let's call it rookie Ross, right? Where you have all the knowledge and
Oh boy.
experience you've gained
Yeah.
over the course of becoming an expert implementer with all the things that you've learned over that. What advice would you give yourself starting out?
I actually the advice I'm about to give, I actually did, and it worked. I surrounded myself that with people in my community that were where I wanted to be, and so the Jonathan Smiths, the Chris Whites, like I could go on and on. There's a list. I am so indebted to these people that have helped me. And so surround yourself with people that are a step or two or quite a bit ahead of you that is willing to help you and coach you and mentor you. And I think I wouldn't change that at all. I actually did that and it worked really well. And that's what I would continue to do and tell my younger version of myself for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you gotta,
Yeah.
the community aspect in EOS. I mean, you've got some heavy hitters in this community
Oh,
that
yeah.
are more than willing to invest a little bit of time if you're
Yeah.
willing to build that relationship. So that's
Can
good.
I say this to you?
Yeah.
A little vulnerability here. For the first 2 or 3 years, I'm going to be honest. Every time we meet in a quarterly collaborative exchange, we meet as implementers every quarter. I'm going to be honest. I felt like an imposter for the first couple of years because there was so much talent, just so much amazing energy, and I don't feel that way. But what I do now is I will make sure that the new people coming in don't feel that way. So I put my arm around them and engage them. So I'm doing what people did for me. And that's what makes our community so amazing because our core values help first, do the right thing, do what we say, grow or die, and humbly confident. But that help first is really important for our community. We help each other.
Yeah,
Yeah.
every EOS implementer that I've brought in here in some form or fashion has alluded to the value or the love or whatever it is of the
Yeah.
community.
Yeah.
So there's definitely something there. It's
Yeah.
it's hard to be a business coach alone. So,
100%.
and so last question:
Yeah.
what is a lesson you're in the middle of learning in this
Yeah.
current moment?
Really good. The biggest takeaway in the last 9 years, and I don't know how else to say this, but I'll say it, the boring and mundane win championships. Now, let me explain. It's not the fireworks and parades. It's, I'm big on Tom Brady. Tom Brady is not the most talented. Like, if you go back to his workout, the combine, it was kind of laughable. But what made him so great, what makes great teams I work with so great is their persistence over time. They're doing the stuff behind the scenes. It's a little boring. It's a little mundane, but every quarter, every day, we're getting better and we're getting better. So it's doing the same thing every day over and over, every quarter over and over, every annual over and over, addressing issues like being disciplined. So EOS is amazing, but the boring and mundane and persistence is what wins championships. And I see it time and time again. These companies, I get two types of companies that I work with. I get climbers and expanders. The climbers just want the next tool. They're not going too deep. They're typically weaker integrator, right?
Mhm.
They just want all the tools and they never really go. But the expanders, strong integrator, visionary. They want to go slow. They want to go deep, and they take it seriously. They're not in a hurry, and so there's 20 major tools that we have. They're all not they're simple, they're just not easy. So I kinda look at it like working out. Working out sounds really sexy and fun, but guess what? Sometimes it's boring, it's mundane, you gotta show up, it's not easy. It's simple, the concept is simple, but it's not easy. And so it's that persistence every time, and then someone looks at you and go, "Man, you look good." And when someone says that, it makes you wanna go do the boring and mundane even more, and that's EOS. I don't know how else to say it, but that's what I've learned the most.
Oh, that's such a good word. It makes me
Yeah.
think of the San I know you guys were just out in San Antonio for
Yeah.
QC, but it makes me
Yeah.
think of the San Antonio Spurs in the, like, 2000s with Tim Duncan, just
Yeah.
fundamental basketball. Wasn't, like, flashy like it is
Nope.
nowadays, but they got the job done every game.
Right?
And
So
so
fundamentals wins championships. I
yeah.
say when you get your fundies down, man, you can do a lot of great things. And that's what EOS is. It's no perfection. We got to get you to 80% or better and just do the same thing over and over. And you get the right people in the right seats, great things are going to start happening.
Yes.
Yeah.
Man, Ross, this has
Yeah.
been so good. If someone wants to get in
Thank
touch
you.
with you, maybe they want to learn more about you or get in touch, maybe
Sure.
pick your brain as a coach, maybe they are a newer
Yeah.
implementer, or if they're a client that happen to watch this,
Yeah.
what's the best place to get in touch with you?
No, absolutely. My email, I think, is a good one, just ross.gibbs@eosworldwide.com. You can also text me or call me at 612-760-6866. Super available again. But I really appreciate you having me on and
Yeah.
sharing with you today.
Well, thank you for coming on. We'll put the link out in the show notes to some of your information so if people want to
Cool.
get easy touch with that. But
Yeah.
thank you for coming on and
Thank
sharing your
you.
wisdom. I know it was beneficial to me, and I know it will be beneficial to other people as well.
Yeah.
So thanks for coming on, and thanks for tuning in. If you are serious about growing your coaching practice, feel free to get in touch with us. We
Yeah.
are
For
all
sure.
about helping business coaches like Ross build their practice.
Yeah.
We believe that good business coaches and healthy business coaches leads to good and healthy businesses, and that's what we're about. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah. Thanks, Karen.
That's it for today's episode of the Ambitious Coach Lab. My hope is that something here helps you sharpen your craft and keep building a coaching practice you're proud of. Before we wrap, a quick thank you to our sponsor, 90. If you're coaching leadership teams, having your clients run their entire world in 90 truly elevates your work. Vision, rocks, scorecards, issues, it all lives in one centralized place. The clarity keeps your clients aligned between sessions and makes every conversation you have with them more focused and more impactful. I've used 90 with over 500 leadership teams, and I can tell you it makes great companies better and great coaches even more effective. Feel free to use promo code AC20 for 20% off. Again, that's AC20 for 20% off. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I'm Cam, cheering you on as you grow your ambitious coaching practice. We'll see you next time.